is 6 p.m. according to phone time here. So this is a regular meeting. Monday 15th meeting has been postponed or to today. I'm gonna have to ask the clerk, is this, I'm on the 15th agenda. Is this identical?
It is identical.
Okay, so it's November 17th at 6 p.m. Will the clerk please call the roll?
David,
Here.
Mark,
Here.
Chelsea,
Here.
Bob,
Here.
Jay,
Here.
Jeff,
Here.
Thomas.
Excused.
Thank you.
Okay, 6 assembly members this evening, 4 in the chambers and 2 zooming in. It's now time for the voluntary pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty. Okay, next item on the agenda, we have approval of minutes for the regular assembly meeting. 2 meetings, October 19th and November 1st, and a special meeting of November 5th. I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes as presented.
So moved. Second.
Are there any changes proposed? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to item 4, amendment and approval of the meeting agenda this evening. Is there any amendments proposed to this agenda? Member Kinsinger.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to have a discussion about the post office.
Okay,
Not that we can necessarily do anything about it, but just see if we can.
any other amendments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda as amended.
So move. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will move forward with that one amendment, adding a discussion item. Public hearings, there are none this evening. There are no bid awards. That brings us to persons to be heard related to this evening's agenda. Clerk Thompson, could you just pick them as they're in line?
Yes, first up, we have Jim Kerr.
Okay, Mr. Kerr, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to start this off with, this is my personal statement and not the stance or opinion of the Petersburg Borough. In 2013, I moved my family to Petersburg for what Petersburg was and had to offer. Petersburg was a loving and caring community where kids walked safely down the street any time of day. People in the community waved and said hi to one another. It wasn't uncommon for your quick grocery store trip to turn into an hour-long social event. Fast forward to COVID. Petersburg has turned neighbors against each other over masking, vaccines, and mandates. Assembly members vote for masking with no enforcement, then once passed, one enforcement. Local medical professionals are always asking for more masking, vaccines, testing, and mandates. From my personal experience, fully vaccinated people brought COVID into the police department, who then gave it to unvaccinated people. 2 of these officers wore masks 100% of the time as they were working together in the same vehicle. Officers have contracted COVID at work while other borough departments have closed to the public. Officers have been placed on quarantine and now their families have contracted COVID. Now you're asking officers to enforce a mask ordinance on both people and businesses. What makes them want to put themselves out? What makes them want to put themselves out there when enforcing masking is going to result in verbal altercations to include physical conflicts? I've heard medical professionals say there's little chance officers will get COVID while enforcing the ordinance, but these are also the same medical professionals who pushed vaccines and masking. Members of the police department followed both and still contracted COVID. If you want the mask mandate enforced, it will be enforced, but only until officers get hired by another police department. We have highly trained officers in Petersburg who would be an asset to any police department. Currently, police departments are actively recruiting in Alaska, offering $10,000 to $20,000 recruitment bonuses, along with higher wages and lower cost of living. I used to say the quality of life and what Petersburg has to offer is what keeps officers here. But if we start enforcing mandates and ordinances that divide this community further, officers will move from Petersburg because of the quality of life and conflicts. Let me be clear. I do not support enforcing mask mandates or ordinances. The Petersburg Police Department has worked hard to build a positive relationship with the community it serves. Voting yes on enforcing masking allows the assembly to hide behind their vote while they destroy the community's relationship among neighbors, the police department, and local government. Sending officers with guns and arrest powers to a masking complaint is absurd. Using the police department to enforce a masking violation should be viewed as excessive force. Please, I ask you, consider reacting to COVID numbers differently. Let's start looking at the number of people requiring medical attention or in the hospital during an outbreak instead of the overall positive numbers. We've talked about flattening the curve, but now that curve seems to be an oval track with no checkered flag in sight. Can we get an update on how many people in the community are vaccinated and how many others have contracted COVID? Put these numbers together, and I bet as a community that curve was flattened a long time ago. Thank you for your time, and I hope you do what's best for the Petersburg community. James Kerr.
Okay, Clerk Thompson.
Next, we have Caitlin Ince.
Can you hear me okay?
You're coming in fine.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for your time too. I'm just calling in regards to the additions brought forward in the emergency ordinance. I'm a person just who values small businesses in town, and I must voice my opposition to the emergency ordinance and its fines. I feel that it's just simply not realistic to enforce. Anyone with a condition that keeps them from wearing a mask legally does not have to explain why they aren't able to wear a mask. The businesses don't have the time to waste questioning every single customer that walks through their doors, followed by the possibility of finding a fine violation that was not even warranted to begin with. A business has the right to refuse or serve anyone they choose within their own business, and there is no offense to that. But when leaders in a governing position begin forcing and telling businesses what they are required and must do, and who they may and may not serve, that feels un-American. And you must see that this is an overreach for what it is. Our law enforcement shouldn't have to succumb to enforcing such an ordinance. I'm wondering if the assembly members have spoke with our police officers in regards to enforcing fines and how that will impact their daily workload as it is. These families, these businesses, this community has already been through so much in the course of almost 2 years now. Pushing this ordinance for fines will only hurt these businesses more. It will only create more division and more animosity in an already divided community. This community can only thrive when we aren't divided. I would like to conclude with asking a couple questions that I really hope are considered. As it seems the metaphorical goalpost for this COVID is continually moving, what is the end goal? It has been nearly 2 years of mitigation plan on top of mitigation plan, and to what end? I would ask that you look at the data between California and Florida and determine if all the mandates and regulations that have been made that much of a difference. And at what point can we step back and realize a virus cannot be stopped and that we must live our lives? Are we going to further divide and punish our businesses and families every few months when another variant or a new virus altogether comes along? One must see that additions to the emergency ordinance are a complete unrealistic expectation to be upheld. We cannot agree or comply with such an overstep. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Clerk Thompson.
And next we have Jim Floyd.
Okay, can you hear me?
There, Mr. Floyd. Yes, can hear you
Okay.
fine.
Hello, I'm Jim Floyd, the general manager of Hammer Weekon. Subsequently, yesterday, I was celebrating 2 years being here in Petersburg. First of all, I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'm glad the meeting was postponed. I realize that the municipal code doesn't define a time for the agenda to be posted, only that it's reasonable. I felt that since this will affect all citizens, it was reasonable to give us the normal 72-hour standard that you have historically practiced gathering feedback. Many people were not aware of the emergency meetings that you had and the subsequent mandate. The frustration as a result of that meeting and lack of compliance in the authorship of this mandate today is in large part due to poor communication. The letter you received and the threat of closure is from essential businesses, and we've received support from over 30 local businesses. We are against the idea of holding businesses accountable to enforce the mandates and intervene in the choice that the general public chooses to make. We were never consulted on this issue and very frustrated at the lack of inclusion. We are not equipped to enforce what you're asking. We're short on manpower and resources, the same as we've heard from both the medical community and the schools. We are overworked, stressed, and stretched to the limit. In addition, it is not right that we require employees to be the enforcers in addition to their normal job functions. The problem is that you are fighting human nature. People do not like being forced upon ideals to which they do not believe in. This is a polarized issue that's become weaponized by trying to put punitive damage on it. Just because you have the power to do something doesn't mean it is right. I suggest you slow down and really listen to all sides. The discussion of fines without due process is not okay. I'm sure that our great law enforcement agents have better things to do than stand in local businesses policing masking mandates and handing out tickets to those who do not choose to follow. I also want to say that I agree with Jim Kerr on something where I am fully immunized. Ever since the mandate, I've been wearing a mask religiously in all public spaces because I set an example for my employees. I am currently positive with COVID, so I have no idea how I got it, but I was wearing a mask and I'm 100% vaccinated. So I'm just agreeing with what he already presented to you guys. Just want to say on behalf of the Petersburg Coalition of Small Business, please vote no on ordinance number 2021-20. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this evening.
Next, we have Michael Truex.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes. There are a couple people.
Top of the evening. Thanks for taking my call. Michael Truex here. I got some thoughts regarding tonight's ordinance 2021-20, I think it is. 20 months ago, when the idea of masking first surfaced, I spent around 20 hours looking into both sides of this issue. That was long enough to discover that the effectiveness of masking was far from certain. The studies I found then, and the studies I find now, indicate little, if any, reduction in disease transmission. I was only a little surprised to discover that there were also hidden risks to the use of masks: lower blood oxygen levels, difficulty breathing and conversing, and substantial psychological effects as well. Essentially, what I conducted was a simple cost-benefit analysis where I found that the benefits did not outweigh the harms. I continue to find this when I read further articles on this subject as research piles up. Did you, paid assembly members, conduct such a cost-benefit analysis before you went along with the status quo? If so, I'd like to see 5 studies demonstrating the efficacy of masks, the studies you read, to inform yourselves that this was indeed necessary and effective. I'd like 2 of them to be from before 2019, before the pro-pharma political agenda became so pervasive. I'd like to see some proof that blood oxygen and carbon dioxide levels are not affected by masks in any way. And I'd like to see solid statistical data showing that masks do not adversely affect life expectancy or create an increase in all-cause mortality numbers. These are some of the basic tenets of personal and public health, and my reading shows that masks do greatly affect these numbers while doing little, if anything, to reduce the transmission of communicable disease. I also continue to question why a total focus on COVID-19 case numbers is now the only measure by which we judge public health. Standing in line at the post office, I see firsthand the psychological effects of masks. Standing in line for an hour, you sometimes see no one attempt a conversation. This contrasts greatly to the past, where social interactions, laughter, and smiles were commonplace in such settings. It's why we all loved Petersburg. Recently, during the peak of the latest, quote, outbreak, with around 100 cases, one of our doctors took the time to go door to door to pressure businesses to enforce masking. I'm not surprised by the pressure. I'm surprised that a doctor has nothing better to do during a supposedly life-threatening outbreak. With fewer than 10 COVID hospitalizations in almost 2 years, it sounds to me like that curve has indeed been sufficiently flattened. Please allow us, the responsible citizens of Mitkoff Island, to choose our own path to health. It is not your responsibility to make sure I take my vitamin C tablets or zinc, but those are the things, a few of them, that helped me when I battled with the symptoms of COVID-19. Being healthy is a great balancing act, and focusing only on one risk to our health is an imbalanced approach that I shun. Further mask mandates, fines, Facebook shaming, and more pressure will only serve to further divide a once united community. Please stop mandating things. Thank you very much for taking my phone call. Have a great evening.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Clerk Thompson?
Next, we have Gary Albaugh.
Hello?
Hello, Gary. Yeah, you're coming in fine.
Oh, okay, great. All right, well, good evening, Assembly members. My name's Gary Albaugh, and I'm representing myself. Thank you for your time. I support the mask mandate for the wearing of a face covering anytime you are inside a building that is open to the public. I do not support the fining of individuals or businesses if people do not wear a mask. 2 years ago, Petersburg went into a lockdown of sorts. We sheltered in place, closed down non-essential businesses, etc. For the most part, people were very cooperative and worked together to keep the virus out of town. As time went by and Petersburg was able to keep the number of infections down, some members on the Assembly, as well as members of the community, began asking that we open up the community and try to get back to normal. At that time, the people who refused to wear a face covering and who were complaining of government overreach stated, and I quote, "If things start to get out of control, people will do the right thing. We don't need the government or the borough to tell us what to do." Well, things are out of control, and those same people are not doing the right thing. I would like to ask them, what is their definition of the right thing? If the act of wearing a mask isn't really the issue, and what you really want is for everyone to ignore the virus and just let everybody get sick, then come right on out and say it. Don't be shy. Put your name on it. We currently have staffing shortages throughout our town, and our schools are shutting down. Masks are not the perfect answer, but they are one easy thing we can do to try to keep people healthy and keep our businesses open. I hear a lot of people complaining about government overreach and people having their rights trampled on, but I do not hear any of those same people coming forward with the way they think this current outbreak should be handled. Last weekend, I wrote a letter to the Assembly with a suggestion of how they could use the police department to help educate people on why it is they should follow the mandate and wear their masks while inside a building. It definitely needs help, but is an attempt to solve the problem, not stir the pot. I would like to suggest that the Assembly meet with a representative from each of the businesses in town, and those businesses should show up with a plan as to what they can do to encourage people to mask up. Masks are not perfect, and nobody, including the doctors, nurses, and administrators, have ever said they are. However, it has been proven all over the world that masks do help. If the businesses and mask-resistant people in town have a better idea, let's hear it. We're supposed to all be in this together. Come on, public, let's start working with the Assembly on a solution instead of doing nothing but complaining. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Clerk Thompson.
And next, we have Dana Tinas. Dana, you're up if you can hear me. Okay, well, we'll come back to Dana. Let's go to Tracy McPherson, please.
Tracy, are you there?
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming in fine.
Okay, good. I apologize, I didn't have a chance to prepare remarks, so hopefully they're not too scattered. But good evening to everyone. I just wanted to basically say that I'm against forcing businesses to make people mask. I think that throughout this whole ordeal, I kept watching for things that were claimed in the beginning to be borne out by the evidence. And in my humble opinion, that has not happened. The death rate is the same as it's always been, and it's less than any other really bad flu year. And I understand that some people may be concerned about their health, but I think that things have been being done upside down. And I think that people who are concerned can get vaccinated and they can mask and they can avoid going out to wherever they don't want to go. And I think that it's forcing all the other people who maybe already had it and they have antibodies and whatever, they shouldn't be forced to segregate and mask and take shots that they don't need. And I wish that you would all consider that all of this information is out there and we can all find it. And I don't know where, I don't understand the disconnect between the information that is available and people in positions of power that still want to continue to force people to do these things. You can look at even other countries that have had drastically different outcomes and what they did. And I just think that you should know that this information is out there and that I believe the majority of people understand what is going on. And I don't think that history is going to remember this kindly at all. And I think that you should look at alternative information and listen to the public that you serve. Even if you disagree with them, they are still, you are governing, you are not the governors, the people are the governors. And you need the consent of the governed to make your decisions. And you can't just ignore us. And it feels like you have been ignoring us. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Clerk Thompson.
Okay, and we'll go back to Dana Tinas.
Okay. Are you there, Dana?
Can you hear me now?
You're kind of weak, but
All right,
can hear
I
you.
can shout. Yeah,
Okay.
I was on the phone, but for some reason, *6 did not work for me to unmute. Okay. This assembly has fought against learning anything new. From the moment the government first said 2 weeks to flatten the curve, it seems that Petersburg's assembly has faithfully followed everything they have said. But not everyone has your faith in the intelligence or integrity of federal agencies. While you seem to have closed your eyes to what has been going on all around you the past 2 years, while you have been focused on masks, which might stop a droplet or two, to quote Dr. Fauci, and while you and other locals are busy censoring any discussion that pops up about early treatment of COVID, others have been looking around and thinking how best to fend for themselves and their loved ones. Though we who have expressed skepticism of the reigning narrative have been treated as children needing to be educated, most of us are actually adults who can cut through the confusion to be found online and separate the wheat from the chaff. No, not everybody. Some people will believe anything told them by a person they perceive to be an expert, the council included. But others have been asking questions and questioning the official narrative and finding it wanting. You might believe that with a little more education on social distancing, or with a helpful policeman stopping us at the door of trading union to explain why masks are necessary, that we might finally see the light and repent of our former selfish ways. But it isn't like that. You see, we know that you are missing the big picture. Perhaps because you exist inside an echo chamber where no contradictory voices or ideas can reach you, you might assume that what you know is all there is. But by censoring those contradictory voices, you have limited the opportunities to expand knowledge and understanding, not just for yourselves, but for those with whom you disagree. Dialogue and openness make a democracy stronger. When KFSK refused to air a commentary about early treatment for COVID created by myself and a friend, when the Petersburg COVID Facebook group blocked studies I shared from the CDC and FDA about the weaknesses inherent in the PCR tests, and then blocked me from the group altogether, when the pilot refused to publish a letter pointing out a new study about the dangers of the spike proteins in vaccines, these actions were a disservice to the community. Even if you disagreed with the premises or conclusions, stopping discussion altogether serves no one. Science is not frozen in time or space. It is never settled, and knowledge has accumulated about the SARS-CoV-2 virus and ways to treat it and help prevent it. Masks are not really a powerful agent. As Mr. Hofstetter has acknowledged, they are only part of a layered approach. Masks are not stopping even fully vaccinated people from contracting COVID, and I think we all have some stories like that. Regarding the new emergency ordinance proposals, a friend who once worked for the city shared with me a few drawbacks to this plan. On top of everything else, if this is a city ordinance, then the city will be spending money to prosecute when people are given citations but decide not to pay. If it is officers wasting time in court, it is their wages. If it is the city attorney, it will be big bucks. And if someone fails to appear and a warrant is issued and the person or persons cannot post bail, the jail could get full very fast. A saying attributed to General Omar Bradley: education makes a people easy to lead but difficult to drive, easy to govern but impossible to enslave. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Clerk Thompson?
And next we have Nathan Lopez.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, if you're coming in fine, Nathan.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Jensen and Petersburg Borough Assembly. My name is Nathan Lopez, and I'm the lead pastor of Lighthouse Assembly of God. First off, thank you to each of you for your public service to our amazing community of Petersburg. Our church is honored to be a part of this great town and has been a part of Petersburg as a church since 1948. We love the opportunities we've had to serve our community through drive-in movies, drive-through food distributions, many events for children and youth, July 3rd events, weekly services, and much more. We have always valued the ability to be able to reach people in all walks of life, even in differences of opinion, for the greater good of sharing the life of Jesus to others. Today, I'd like to address the proposed Borough Ordinance 2021-20 that states businesses, employers, and building owners or lessees shall deny admittance to any individual who fails to comply with this emergency ordinance, which would include churches. From the ordinance proposed language of communal space means any area in a building where members of more than one household can commingle. As a church, we believe that we cannot deny anyone the right to worship. For us to deny admittance to anyone in our community to worship God would go directly against our belief that we have modeled and lived for years as a church body, and that ultimately was exemplified by Jesus Christ. We believe we are a lighthouse in the community, and people need the love and acceptance of the Lord more now than ever before. Our issue is not against the mask mandate. It is against us being forced to deny admittance to people from coming into our church to worship together, and we cannot do that. We value our medical centers' input and advice. We have our own mitigation plans in place. We have a sign up in our windows sharing the borough mask mandate and our own mitigation measures. We provide masks and hand sanitizer. We have seating spaced out in our large building. This last week, our church board and myself made the decision, due to the current high cases in town, that we would be online only for our Sunday service. That was 3 days ago. I could not sleep at night knowing that we denied access to anyone in our community the opportunity to enter our church and worship the Lord. Our church will continue to reach all people in all walks of life and freely share the good news of Jesus Christ that is needed now more than ever before. Thank you for your time, and I am praying for God's best for each of you.
Thank you for your testimony this evening.
And next we have Michelle Funt.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good evening, Assembly members. As stated, this is Michelle Funt, and I thank you for your time and service to our community. I'm advocating against the adoption of Emergency Ordinance 2021-20. Masks are medical devices. Legislating the wearing of masks because others have done it does not make it right, nor does it make it constitutionally legal. At no time before in the history of the US has the individual been required to change his lifestyle and submit to a medical device in order to keep his neighbor medically healthy. Demanding that community members be responsible for another person's health in this way is ludicrous. I'm not responsible to never eat peanuts again in my lifetime because I might come across someone in my life who has a peanut allergy. For I am not responsible for protecting all others for an occurrence that may not ever happen or I could not possibly know about. That does not mean that I don't, as a good community member, take care around persons with known allergies. If you cannot take the risk of catching COVID by a trip downtown or attendance at your local church or community gathering, then I think it's wise to stay home. If you are a business owner who doesn't want to be exposed to anything, then post your requirements for everyone who comes into your business. I will support each individual community member's right to their own medical measures, but not a legislated means that denies the rights of those they govern. This current ordinance change will force each business person, employer or employee, each building owner who may or may not be present, and even each pastor to act as a deputy to the police. So will the borough be on the hook for liability if due process rights are violated? Absolutely. But so will the individual involved and their employer or property owner. If a property owner rents his facility to a community member for a party of just 60 individuals who do not wear masks, then that property owner is on the hook for $6,000 for a party that they may have charged only $500 in rental fees for. If an overzealous employee decides to physically remove someone because the owner fears even one fine, then they could hurt someone and be liable for thousands of dollars. You cannot place such an onerous responsibility upon the members of this community without an indemnity clause making you responsible for all legal claims that arise out of these actions, whether they commit a violation of the ADA by asking questions about someone's mask exemption, or they cause some physical or mental harm to some non-mask wearer. Each business owner has the right to decide for themselves if they want people to mask. They can post their decision at the front door, and if someone is non-compliant and refuses to leave, then they can call the police to enforce the business owner's decision by removing the trespasser. Do not force this deputization of the business owners. Persons in this community that can worship when such commands come only from a person's God. Lastly, like Jim, I would argue that your voting on this ordinance tonight is a violation of your own rules about notice to the public. The notice for tonight's meeting was given on Monday morning, assumedly because it was never posted to the city website before Sunday. However, that Sunday notice was for a Monday meeting, not a Wednesday meeting. When you change the meeting date, you change the notice timeline too. Everything about how this notice has transpired mars the image of this assembly unless you this is not ordinance. The uptick that your administrators are citing currently affects less than 1/3 of percent. None of the doomsday prophecies concerning COVID in Petersburg have come true. We have never had over 1/3 of 1% of the population infected at any one time. Your belief that we should have absolutely no cases ever is utopian. Until man creates an absolute cure for the common cold and flu, with coronavirus as well, then they will not have a cure for COVID virus.
Michelle, you seem to be fading in and out, and I'm not quite sure what the situation is here.
Lost her. Oh, there she is. Should we ask her if she's done?
Didn't appear like, Michelle, can you hear me okay? I think we've lost contact. I'm gonna ask, Member Stanton, Gregor, were you having the audio breaking up as well on your end?
Yeah, I was hearing the same feedback cutting out, just like you guys there.
Okay, all right.
I'm here now.
Yeah, we lost a little bit of your testimony there, but if you'd like to continue, I think we've got the gist of it, but if you would like to continue, you can. You've got like a.
I'm not sure where it cut out. I just did the last paragraph.
Yeah, you're still cutting out. So we have an
Okay.
audio problem here. I'm not sure if it's on our end or or if it's on your end. How close were you to being done with your testimony?
Can you hear me? I think so. Okay.
Yes.
I was just summarizing the last paragraph. I don't think there was proper notice, and I do not believe that it's an emergency with only less than 1/3 of 1% of the affected persons at any one time. And so thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, thank you for your testimony. If you'd like to call me later, I could explain to you about the notice of the meeting. I think what we did was proper, but I could explain it to you if you'd call me, and my number is 518-0009. So Clerk Thompson?
Yes, thank you. Next we have Russell Tinas.
Are you there, Russell?
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
The floor is yours.
Okay. Yeah, I'm calling in reference to item B under new business, in particular item 3, with regard to ordinance 2021-20, 2021-19. It reads as follows. A provision that requires businesses and building owners to deny admittance to any individual who fails to comply with the ordinance. Boy, that sounds heavy-handed. Item 3 should be removed without question. Item 3 not only deputizes local business to do the dirty work of the borough health officer, but it's discriminatory on its face. And there's two other issues here: the absence of accountability on the part of the assembly, and the complete absence of reciprocity on the part of the citizen. Now, as to the first, last month the assembly decided to create a health czar to work with the borough manager when deciding what constitutes a health emergency. Now, both of these positions are unelected, and they're therefore unaccountable to the public. The assembly has effectively recused itself from the process. This is short-sighted at best. As far as a health officer, you know the old bromide says that if the only tool in your kit is a big mallet, then every challenge to your thinking strangely acquires the appearance of a peg. We can't allow arbitrary rule by dictate by an unelected health czar. Actions affecting our economy and our civil rights can't be left in the hands of an angry doctor with a big mallet. As to the second, with the assembly effectively recusing itself from any public health declarations by the health czar, how can a citizen seek redress? This is a very lopsided provision. It lacks accountability It makes redress by the citizen costly. It should be rejected. Now, with regard to item 3, I'm sure that the Assembly is keenly aware that the idea of deputizing local business to discriminate against non-compliant customers under the threat of fine is not very popular at all. I can already see the health czar being ridden out of town on a rail. Now, you may also ask, how do these provisions affect my civil rights? Well, I'm glad you asked. I can give you a couple of good examples. Bethel and Anchorage. In Bethel, the mask and injection mandates have become egregious. 3-year-olds are now required to mask up. And mandates are used to severely restrict public access to assembly chambers. In Anchorage, this has become an art form. The minimum distance requirements, mask requirements, and injection mandates are being used to retard public participation. Both assemblies are very unpopular with the citizenry. My advice is, 1, remove paragraph 3 dealing with business mandates. 2, require that the Assembly unanimously sign off whenever a public health mandate is called for by the health czar. That's really all I have to say. Well, I have a lot more to say, but that gets to the heart of it, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Clerk Thompson?
And next we have Brittany Collum.
Brittany, are you there? Brittany, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're coming in now.
Oh, thank you. Okay. All right. So I am calling in tonight regarding the masking ordinance, and I just want to say we're discussing an emergency ordinance again when we really, I would argue, don't have an emergency. We, being myself and many others, have called in, written letters, and asked that you hear us, hear our concerns, and you have refused. You have blocked your ears, mocked us, and made condescending remarks to our concerns. We have presented information to you, backed up by science, and even that wasn't deemed good enough. Your continued power plays at controlling people's health and now businesses and activities is out of line, causing undue stress on our already struggling town. You say that you are taking the precautions of the doctors and of the current health recommendations. And it begs the question, what is health at this point? The WHO, who seem to be quoted often, described health as being a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. This is something they said on October 7th, 2011. Looking at our town, if and when you do, not merely through the lens of what is recommended for COVID mitigation, do you think that this town is healthy? Do you think that people are mentally and socially healthy, being told that they're going to be fined if they don't wear a mask? Being told that they need to enforce the rules in their own businesses that you are putting on this town? Do you think that this is promoting health? Do you think it's healthy to ask young children to test on a regular basis just to check if they have a virus that if they caught, they are most likely going to recover from with no issue? Do you think that it's a good idea to make young ones wear a mask and expect them to keep it clean and not catch other germs besides COVID? Yes, there are still other germs on the planet. How does it make sense to say that masking is the best way to stop COVID at this point in time? Where are your reminders about vitamins? Why not recommend that people get some fresh air, eat healthy, and maybe even go for a walk? Even from the medical center, there is such emphasis on masks and vaccination. Why not remind people that there are other options out there? We have called in and explained that masks don't work, but our sources are never as good as yours, and we are tired of our words falling on deaf ears. My only conclusion that I can come to is that you obviously are seeking compliance, not health. If you were after health, you would allow us to make our own health decisions. After all, who knows us best? Who knows what's best for each of us? Certainly not all you sitting on your panel. If you were after health, you would be promoting vitamins, fresh air, and the common sense courses of action that people can take, promoting these, not demanding that people comply. Instead, you are asking that we all wear masks, and you are now asking that business owners enforce your rules that you are making up as we go along. If you are after health, and I'm speaking about all facets of health here, you wouldn't visit businesses with a police officer in uniform and a doctor reminding businesses to wear masks and have their patrons mask up as well. People are stressed, people are divided, people are angry, and your ordinances that you keep writing up are absolutely 100% not helping. You are in positions of power, whether you see it that way or not. Because of the outcry of the hospital and the school and your own fears of the virus, you are drowning out what the rest of the public has to say about these ordinances. You are dividing the town, and you seem very disconnected from Petersburg, from the town that you are here to help protect, and do not understand that these ordinances are tearing the town apart and you have caused major damage. Trust has been lost, on my side anyway, for you sitting on the panel. You are not and have not helped anything since the virus scare hit Petersburg. This is government overreach, and people and businesses of America do not need any form of government stepping in to take over our health decisions. It's a prime example of what can and will go wrong when government steps in to supposedly help people. You have threatened to close businesses if we do not comply. The town is sick and it is hurting, not from the virus, but from you. The town is hurting financially, and you want to close businesses right before Christmas so you can get your way and force compliance with the ordinance. The police and business owners have much better things to do than to enforce these preposterous rules that you are pressing on us. It's a dark cloud over this town. You do not listen, and your positions have been compromised, in my opinion. These used to be respected positions, and now it's just a joke. Sure, you have a few faithful followers in town who praise what you say and do because they are afraid also, and you are listening to their outcry and not us, the rest of us. The rest of us are upset, angry, and hurt. It's time to back up, back off, and listen, please. If you take care at all for this town, you will take a moment and listen, even if you don't agree with it. At least listen and look into it rather than dismiss and ignore us. Is that so much to ask? Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this evening.
And next we have Stephanie Landon.
Are you there, Stephanie?
Well,
Hello?
oh, okay, good.
Yeah, hello.
Hi. Can you
hello.
hear me?
Yes, you have the floor.
Okay, hi, yeah, this is Stephanie Landon. Thank you very much for taking my call, and I appreciate the service that you guys provide to our community. I just wanted to state my objections for the proposed mask ordinance 2021-20. Ironically, I learned about this ordinance 2 days ago in China, actually a day and a half ago in China, when I was in a hotel room, and going onto the website and reading what was being proposed, ironically struck me extremely just right to the heart. It is the epitome of what tyranny is. And there is a lot of differing science out there that for the mask and not for the mask, but there's an overwhelming amount of evidence that shows that the mask provides little or no effect preventing this cause of COVID. I didn't get a chance to really organize my thoughts, so it's a little bit scattered, but I thought it was imperative to stress what I'm seeing on the road internationally. I travel every month all over the world, went around the world 3 times, and I just got back. And I see the varying draconian measures by some country and the lax measure by others, and the outcome. The one thing that I do know is that this is a very tight community, although it's been split and divided by politics and this COVID thing over the last 2 years. And I know as a citizen, it's important to keep our community safe, but I also know that it's important that we all have individual rights to choose what's best for ourselves and what's best for our family. And that this legislative body does not have the right to impose such draconian measures to require that these business owners, you know, be the enforcers. And I would just hope that the assembly seriously take a good look in the mirror about what they're proposing and see that this is very tyrannical, because this leads to other tyrannical, you know, future things like vaccine mandates like they have in Bethel and all these other things. So like I said, I didn't get a chance to organize my thoughts on paper because it was such last minute. I've been traveling, but I just find that it's important that we unify this city and the people in it. And by imposing these mask mandates and fining people and having these business owners, you know, basically be the enforcers, it's not gonna end well. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Clerk Thompson, are there more people in the queue?
Well, Mayor Jensen, we have Amanda Omer on the list. We did not see her number in the queue. We texted her and she said she's calling in now. So we're trying to keep our eyes open here. So while we have just this pause, after Amanda speaks, if she gets to, that is the end of the people that have signed up. There are more people in the queue or more numbers in the queue. If there is anyone else in the queue that would like to speak, I would ask that you please raise your hand.
I did have a message come through, Clerk Thompson, that Donna Marsh tried to call in and couldn't get through. So I don't know if one of those numbers is hers, but
We'll go ahead and let Ramona Brooks speak at this moment.
Ramona, are you there? Hello, can you hear me okay? You're kind of faint, but you're clear.
Do you hear me right now?
A little weak.
Okay, this is Sarah Reed, not Ramona Brooks. So I don't know if you want to hear from me now or if you want to try to get Ramona back on.
Who?
I can't make you out. I don't know if the other assembly members can, or it looks like everybody's having a hard
Sarah
time.
Reed. It's Sarah Reed.
Sarah Reed? Okay.
Sarah, I have the volume up as loud as it can go. Is there a way you can speak louder into the phone, please?
Yeah, I can try. Does this help?
That's better, but barely audible.
I'm sorry that you can't hear me very well. I'm just calling about the massive, or yet another one of the massive overreach proposals that you guys are voting on today. I'd just like to say that we do not need you guys to hold our hands on making health choices for ourselves, that we are totally capable of making our own choices and taking our own risks. And we don't need your proposals, we don't need your ordinances, we don't need your mandates. We're not asking for help. We can do this on our own. We've been doing it for 2 years now, and I think it's time for everybody to just mind their own business and stop getting into all the citizens' businesses. So I would like to say, please stop your communist agenda, and actually want to quote Thomas Jefferson, and I think this applies to the road that you guys are. Thomas Jefferson says, when tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. And I think you guys are flirting with a lot of danger, places that you shouldn't be thinking that you have control over. So I would just like to urge you to change your course. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your testimony this evening. Clerk Thompson, are there other people calling
Yes,
in?
we will try to allow Ramona Brooks to speak now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming in fine.
Okay, well, I just want to say, you know,
You still there?
I am sorry, I'm very emotional, but I'm an frontline worker and I've been quarantined even though I tested negative. And just, I don't think that's right. People should have the right to decide if they want a mask or not. I wear a mask all the time, but I don't force it on people. So please take that into consideration because we're all trying to make a living right now and it's making it really hard. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you for calling in this evening. Clerk Thompson, did you ever get a call from Donna Marsh?
No, we did respond to her email as well, trying to give her another number. Let me see if there's anybody else here. Mayor Jensen, it looks like that's it for related to the agenda.
Okay, well, with that being said, unfortunately, we had a few difficulties this evening, but hopefully everybody feels that they've got their testimony in that wanted to put their testimony in. That brings us to item 8 on the agenda, persons to be heard unrelated to items on today's agenda. Clerk Thompson, there are a few people on that item.
We have one person who has signed up, and that is Dana Tinas.
Okay, start the process.
Hi, can you hear me, Mayor Jensen?
Yes.
Okay, I'll speak up. I'd like to share with you all what the pilot censored last summer. As you all know, SARS-CoV-2 has a spike protein on its surface. Because that protein is what allows the virus to infect our bodies, pharmaceutical companies have been using it in vaccines. The shots program our own cells to manufacture the protein, and if we can mount an immune response against it, in theory, we can prevent SARS-CoV-2 from infecting the body. That was the theory. But researchers have learned that the spike protein is inherently dangerous in and of itself. Dr. Brian Bridle, an immunologist in Ontario, says, "We made a big mistake. We thought the spike protein was a great target antigen. We never knew the spike protein itself was a toxin. By vaccinating people, we are inadvertently inoculating them with a toxin." Additionally, vaccine researchers previously assumed mRNA vaccines would behave like traditional vaccines, remaining mostly in the injection site at the shoulder muscle. But Bridle said he and a group of international scientists filed a FOIA request in Japan to get access to Pfizer's biodistribution study, which Japan required before they would use the Pfizer vaccine. Biodistribution studies are used to determine where an injected compound travels in the body and which tissues or organs it accumulates in. Dr. Bridle says, "It's the first time ever scientists have been privy to seeing where these messenger RNA vaccines go after vaccination. Is it a safe assumption that it stays in the shoulder muscle? The short answer is absolutely not. The biodistribution study shows the vaccine spike protein gets into the blood where it circulates from days to months post-vaccination, accumulating in organs and tissues, including the spleen, bone marrow, the liver, adrenal glands, and in quite high concentrations in the reproductive organs. The spike protein is produced on the surface of our cells. And recognizing these spikes on our cells as being abnormal, the body attacks them. Beyond just making antibodies, our body attacks our own cells, the beginning of autoimmune disease. Heart problems, problems with the cardiovascular system, bleeding and clotting are all associated with the COVID-19 disease. But what has been discovered by the scientific community is that the spike protein on its own, even without the rest of the virus, is almost entirely responsible for the damage to the cardiovascular system. Yet here we are injecting billions of spike proteins, or the ability to manufacture spike protein, into ourselves, in quantities far greater than what we would experience with naturally acquired COVID-19. Just as children should not be wearing masks, just so they should be kept far away from these dangerous shots. Sweden, Iceland, and Denmark have prohibited anyone under the age of 30 from getting the injections. Yet here in the US, Gavin Newsom has mandated COVID vaccinations for all children in California. The rise of the Delta variant has come from the use of the COVID vaccines, according to Dr. Peter McCullough, cardiologist, internist, and epidemiologist in Dallas. He explains that evolutionary pressure on the virus has created a situation where for the first time, we have 99% Delta as a single strain in the United States. We've never had that, he says. Just like we have people with different hair color, we've always had a blend of virus strains. Why do we have 99% Delta? Answer, because Delta is thriving in the noses and mouths of those who are vaccinated. Thriving. These vaccines are for a virus that's no longer circulating, the Alpha variant. So this idea that you're going to take a vaccine and suddenly go into the workplace and you're not a threat to somebody is erroneous. The vaccinated are just as much a threat to someone else as the unvaccinated, more, because they have a false sense of assurance that they could not be contagious. The solution? Strengthen your immune system and get early treatment when your turn comes. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. And I believe do we have Donna Marsh on the line now?
We do. We have Donna Marsh, and then after that, one more caller that was unable to raise their hand and texted Becky instead, and then we should be good to go.
Right,
So Donna Marsh, you're up.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. These proposals to add to the emergency ordinance need to be dismissed outright. Their unconstitutional, punitive, and authoritarian overreach are appalling. What you are suggesting is that for the next unknown amount of time, the citizens of Petersburg, including business owners, are pitted against each other, dividing further this community, driving businesses into the ground. Maybe that's your goal. And to discourage any future growth in this community, unless it's more government. I've lived here over 35 years, and sadly, it is not the nice town it once was, and large thanks to the way COVID has been handled. Remember way back when it was proposed that we mask for only 2 weeks, just 2 weeks, to flatten the curve so as not to overwhelm the medical system. By the way, masking is about as effective as standing behind a chain link fence and being shot with a shotgun. Not very effective. Then it's been a take the jab kind of coercion until about 70% of the population has been vaxxed, many under threat of being fired from their jobs. Then we could get back to normal. These tactics have further blasted away individual freedoms given first by God, and secondly, in the US Constitution. Well, masking has gone on almost 2 years. The vaccination rate for this town alone is close to 70%, and you're still making more and more demands. In spite of the spike in cases, a small handful of people are actually getting sick, and even fewer enough to have medical care, albeit it seems that medical care is reserved for the vaccinated and not so much for those who have not been. Enough is enough. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. And there's one other caller that was in the queue but couldn't get recognized for.
Yes, and we have,
items. Okay.
yes, Nancy Hoshar.
So is that on the phones or?
Hi. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Excuse my voice. I will do the best I can. My name is Nancy Hosher, and I'm calling in tonight to advocate for not adding the proposed language additions to Ordinance 2021. I say no to weaponizing businesses against their customers, ordering our businesses, our churches, our post office, and our local groups to deny access and find their own customers, neighbors, and friends will not only not bring about the desired outcome you're looking for of changing people's behavior regarding masking, it will only cause more division and animosity to an already exhausted and fragile community. Taking away liberties, destroying the economy, and making people despondent and dependent on government handouts from an illness in which the vast majority of people recover completely makes no sense. In the U.S. alone, drug overdose deaths are up 28%. That translates into 1 every 5 minutes over the last 2 years. Small businesses in America have collapsed while big box stores, big tech companies make millions as we are forced to stay apart, stay home, and stay safe. For a virus with a 99.8% survival rate. Now, here in our own community, instead of helping our businesses during these hard times stand strong, you're proposing policies that will only do harm to them and to us. I see this as only promoting hostility and creating injustice. It doesn't take much imagination to look ahead and to guess at the outcome of this. Again, I say no to weaponizing the population of Petersburg against each other. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Clerk Thompson, is there anyone else in the queue for items unrelated to tonight's agenda?
There is not.
Okay, we will move on to board, commission, and committee reports. There are none this evening. Item 10, consent agenda. There's nothing there. Report of other officers. We have a update on redistricting from Member Tremblay.
Yes, thank you. It'll be really fast. And Clerk Thompson, will I throw everything into deep chaos if I try to share a screen as a fellow presenter?
I don't believe so. Give it a try.
Okay. If it happens, I'm really sorry. Yes, because the Alaska Redistricting Board set its final maps. Are you seeing?
We are.
Yay. Okay. So now I just need it to stop moving. So here is the final map. I am going to vocalize it out for our radio audience. Good news, we are remaining in the district with Sitka. It is now, our district is now going all the way up to Yakutat, coming on over to us and heading down south all the way to Heidelberg. It does split us with Wrangell, and it sounds like that is what Wrangell preferred. They would rather be with Ketchikan, and I believe it was phrased like not compete with us as similar size communities, that a lot of the state offices are getting consolidated into Petersburg. And so they're hoping that by staying with Ketchikan, that would avoid that issue. So yes, pretty good news. And so this is the final map. It sounds like things got a little dramatic in the Senate question up north. So there might be some news about lawsuits regarding that. But when it comes to Southeast, it was relatively straightforward. So quick update on that. And yeah, thanks for letting me take us all on this journey. I hope it's been informative for everybody. Any questions? I don't know if I can answer them, but I could try. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Anyway.
Any other people want to look at the map, or should I be done?
I think we should move on.
Okay.
Okay, that brings us to the mayor's report. I'd like to thank the veterans. A heartfelt thank you goes out to our local veterans for your service to our country. Seeking letters of interest, Petersburg Borough is accepting letters of interest from citizens who wish to serve the community as board members to the Southeast Alaska Power Agency for calendar year 2022. The Borough Assembly will appoint 1 voting member and 1 alternate to the SEPA board. In addition, we have vacant seats to the following boards and commissions. Planning Commission, 2 vacant seats. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, 2 vacant seats. Public Safety Advisory Board, 1 vacant seat. Appointments to the Planning Commission and the Parks and Recreation and Public Safety Advisory Boards will be in effect until October 2022 municipal election. Letters of interest should be submitted to Mayor Jensen or Clerk Thompson. Actually, they should be submitted to Clerk Thompson at the Borough office located at 12 South Nordic Drive by sending to Post Office Box 329, Petersburg, Alaska 99833, or by emailing to dthompson@petersburgak.gov. And that is the end of the mayor's report. That brings us to the manager's report. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to start off just to kind of clear someone's name. One of our callers talked about Dr. Gisillo and having something better to do with his time than visit with the local shopkeepers. He actually was recovering from shoulder surgery and was doing that on his own time, working with the chief to visit businesses. So wanted that to be real clear. He did that out of the goodness of his heart and caring for the community and trying to get the word out. So anyway, Ryan continues to work on the fire engine specifications with the team from the volunteers. When that's finished, it'll go through Chris and I and Sandy to take a look at and double check before it comes back to the assembly. The volunteers, fire, EMS, and search and rescue have been participating in virtual training due to the COVID surge in Petersburg. Kind of a reminder, Parks and Rec is working on placing a light at the ice skate pond. Please contact the Parks and Rec Advisory Board or Stephanie Payne with comments or input. We have suspended visitation at assisted living due to the recent COVID outbreak. Please call 772-2445 with any questions. We hope to open soon. Our outbreak continues to be significant, and we're going to work on that up there. It's hard on the folks not to be able to see their relatives, especially as we get closer to the holidays. So we'll talk with Dr. T about what kind of mitigation we could potentially put in place to open that up a little bit. The residents of Mountain View Manor would like to thank Pastor Eric Olson and his wife for ministering to our residents over the years. They will miss him and wish him all well in his retirement. Moderna booster shots were given by PMC to residents at the manor that wanted them on Friday, the 12th of November. And we continue to be a little bit short-staffed in multiple departments due to the most recent outbreak. This includes the police department, dispatch, public works, the motor pool, and Parks and Rec. And I missed water and wastewater. Equipment is ready for snow removal, and we have plans to cover the snow removal routes if the need occurs before we're up to full staff levels, as we're slowly getting some people back. Motor pool shop repair project is progressing well. Interior paint is nearly complete, and the next steps will be installation of mechanical and electrical fixtures and equipment, including the new overhead crane. I believe the crane is now installed, and we're just waiting to get it tested and certified. Sanitation is working on a plan for transitioning recycling pickups to every other week instead of weekly. The changeover will take place after the holiday season and will be advertised for several weeks beforehand. We are looking into bringing an overhead door specialist to town to evaluate and repair the various garage doors at several borough facilities. Many of these doors have developed problems over the years, and our intention is to put together a plan to get them all working properly again. This may involve budgeting for replacement of some older doors that are in poor condition. Molly is working with our contractor to acquire the last data needed for the PD's new E911 system. And federal agencies are continuing to hold briefings on the new infrastructure bill that is just signed by the president. Liz has been attending the relevant ones, trying to help us spot those that will apply to Petersburg. Petersburg residents have received over $725,000 in rental and utility payments through the Alaska Housing Rent Relief Program. Alaska Housing is getting close to announcing its homeowner assistance program. Homeowners experiencing financial difficulties due to COVID-19 are encouraged to sign up to receive program updates at alaskanhousingrelief.org/homeowners. Harbor is working with Tamaco and Thomas Mercer to sleeve a compromised pile in the South Harbor. And we want to thank our harbor users for paying attention to vessels during the stormy weather. Please continue to notify the harbor if you plan on being out of town and provide us with your boat watching contact info. The library is currently offering curbside service. People can place holds in our online catalog or call us, and we will have their item available for pickup Monday through Saturday, 11:30 to 1:30 p.m. Library is working with a graphic designer and Homeport Electronics to create a sign for the Helmy Jensen Community Room. Installation is scheduled for later this month. As we talked about, Dr. Sillo and Chief Kerr visited some local businesses to talk about virus safety and encouraging them to support masking. There's still some organizations that are refusing to support the mandate, and we've had some of those discussions. Andrew, Eris, thank you, sorry. Carl Tate, Eric Wolf, and James Kerr received SWAT 1 certified operator status on the following: high-risk warrants, SWAT team concepts, room clearing, high-risk warrant planning and execution, mechanical breaching, breach point procedures, distraction, device deployment and certification, tactical firearms training, barricade subject operations, stealth search techniques, chemical munitions deployment, and introduction and practical application of the K9 in a SWAT mission. Andrew, Carl, Eric, and Jim also received SWAT 2 certified operator status on the following: hostage rescue team, individual and team movements, surgical firearms training, sniper training, stronghold options, stealth to contact, open air options, mobile option, covered pile tactics, vehicle assaults, tactical rescue, tubular assaults, and tactical movement under night vision goggles. I really don't know what all that is, so Jim will have to explain it if you want to know. SWAT 1 and 2 certification will better assist the Petersburg community in the event of crisis. Other members of the department will be trained on the topics by the 4 who attended the training. And I believe that's everything.
Okay, thank you, Manager Giesbrecht. Are there any questions by any assembly members? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a great report, Steve. Just a couple of questions regarding the training that several of the police officers went to. Where was the training held and how long was the training?
It was a little over a week, and it was back east. I can't remember what town it was. It was not close to us.
Okay.
Member Tremblay.
Thank you. I had a question. It's regarding the borough seeking out antigen testing for employees and also the public. I was wondering if you had a status report on that.
We received roughly 2,200 cartridges or home tests yesterday, late in the afternoon. Some number of those are destined for the school because they're earmarked for school use only. And we gave a whole bunch of them to the school this afternoon. We're trying to figure out how many we have left. Those can go to our employees that have kids, but we may just use the school as the distribution point for those. And then the leftover can be distributed among borough employees. I don't know if that's enough to actually get out to the community. That's something I'm going to be talking with the hospital. Sandy's out on vacation, some medical and vacation right now. And all we knew is this stuff was going to show up. It got here a little earlier than we thought, so that's good news. Now we got to figure out how to get it distributed. So 2,200 sounds like a lot, but it goes really fast if we're doing frequent testing. So we'll know more probably in a week or so.
Great, thank you.
Member Mucci, did you have more to your question?
No,
Okay, I wasn't sure if I cut you off. So there is no unfinished business this evening. New business is next. Would we like to take a 5-minute break before we dive into new business? I think it might get lengthy. So we will reconvene when everybody gets back.
And we are unmuted.
Okay, we're back. It's 7:25. All 6 assembly members are present again. We're under item 15, new business. Item A is ordinance 2021-18. This is an ordinance updating various provisions of chapter 14.16 of the municipal code. That's entitled electric utility and including electric rate and connection cost increases. If adopted, ordinance 2021-18 will increase electric rates and connection costs to cover the full annual revenue requirements of the utility and update language to address danger trees, confidentiality of billing, and other important matters. Let me catch my breath here, breathing through this mask here. So anyway, I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its first reading.
So move.
Second. Okay, it's been the motion and a second. Discussion. Berlin.
Yeah, I know Carl's not here and I've got a bunch of questions for him, but one of them that I really want to follow up on has to do with surcharges related to diesel burn. And if we go off of SEPA for some extended period of time, what I read in here is that we would absorb those costs without raising rates. But at some point in time, it seems to me that you're going to have to do something with those, changing that or making a surcharge in here, particularly related to some of the special provisions we had made in here to the schools and some other things. But I want to wrestle that with Carl first before I bring it back. But I got a concern about whether or not we've got ourselves covered.
Okay, good concerns. I'm going to ask the manager, will Carl be at the next meeting?
December
Okay, he will
6th,
be-
yes.
Carl will be back, the utility director, and that'll be our second reading as well as the public hearing. So, any other discussion on this? Clerk, call the roll.
David,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next item under new business, ordinance 2021-20. An emergency ordinance amending emergency ordinance 2021-19, which implemented a public health and safety measure requiring face coverings in indoor public settings to include 1, a fine for non-compliance, 2, communally used areas with its scope, and 3, a provision that requires businesses and building owners to deny admittance to any individual who fails to comply with this ordinance. So I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its first reading.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Tremblay. I would suggest as we go through this, if there's amendments to this, it looks to me like, hang on a minute. The ordinance is broke down into 4 sections, A, B, C, and D. If there's amendments to be made, it might be cleaner if we approach each section. So member Lynn?
If I might, Mayor, just for my edification and maybe some others on Robert's Rules of Order here, related to, let's say we propose to make some changes in discussion, what procedures do we have to use, 1, for the clerk? And 2 is if, let's say that we don't pass this particular ordinance, what happens from that point?
I would, if I'm not mistaken, Clerk Thompson, if we do not pass ordinance 2021-20, we fall back to 2021-19.
Correct. 2021-19 just stays as it is currently.
Okay.
Till
So
the next meeting, till the next,
Till it expires, which is December 6th at midnight, unless earlier repealed by the Assembly.
What date would it expire?
December 6th, the
Okay,
next
2
meeting.
months. Okay. Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 5 amendments or 4 amendments to this ordinance. One related to the business fines, another related to the terminology in private residency, another amendment for oral warnings for fines, and the last one would be to repeal how this ordinance could be repealed. But before I launch into those, I'd be willing to listen to somebody else if they had some discussions first before.
I see you, Member Tremblay. You have the floor. Okay, Jeff.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard to tell from up here. You know, I'm on your big screen. Yeah, as the person who asked for this to be put together, I thought I'd explain why, considering I have no intention of it passing as it was written, but I still brought it forward. And so I thought I'd just explain my thought process. You know, we made a few choices when we passed the original emergency mandate in the last special meeting. We made it temporary, hoping that cases would be going down and that the spread would be contained. And we also didn't include the fine, which we did last year. And then about 24 hours after our meeting, there was an event that was basically a red carpet invitation for COVID. It was 150 people in a badly ventilated space for multiple hours at a time. And we hadn't left ourselves any provision for retroactive, basically conditions. We passed it hoping that the public would respond to the urgency of what 50 cases actively meant and active community spread. And so, given the fact that we hadn't included any enforcement mechanisms, and we basically never really have, except for that one fine of last year, I asked for this to be put together because it included language that involved both in that scenario, individuals, organizers, and the event space itself that hosted that event. And so in my mind, this is an example of what we could have had this whole time. And we never did. And so for my mind, we've been hearing a lot about negotiation and about not listening. And so what this is written out to be is what some folks who have deep medical knowledge of the situation probably would have preferred us try to do from the get, and we never did. And so this was basically me presenting options that we never used and hope to never use. And I'm hoping that we can get to a productive place where we can figure out what would actually work, because people are coming to us talking about personal responsibility as being the way that they see our way out through this. And then we're actually not seeing that actually come into play in community action. So that's my reasoning for why I put this together the way that I did. And yeah, I know it's going to, so I'm seeing this as something that we can either not pass at all and hope that people take that personal responsibility seriously. If a fraction of the energy that came to the assembly went to spaces that are hosting these kinds of super spreader events, maybe they would actually put a pause to hosting those while we have the rate of community spread as the way that we do. So we could do nothing. We could really get into the weeds and amend this. We could also put a pause on taking action entirely and work behind the scenes, one other person, or maybe, because we obviously have to do everything either planning out loud or keep it really tight, which is why this seemed like a surprise, but that's just the nature of Open Meetings Act. So here we are. So anyway, that's my thinking behind all of this. And yeah, here we go. Let's start the conversation.
So Member Mucci, you had some amendments to make.
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, with the discussion, the way it's been going, I mean, if an assembly member was to make a motion, just I guess if you have amendments, just proceed and we'll try to get through the amendments as quick as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first amendment I'd like to entertain is related to business fines. I move to remove the language of the ordinance relating to the responsibility of businesses and building owners as follows. In the title description of the ordinance, delete all words after the word scope and add an and between non-compliance. And number two.
We just should do one amendment at a time, I think.
That's fine. Let's just take number one first.
Great.
Needs a second, please.
I'll second that. Okay, motion's been made with the second. Please explain, either Clerk Thompson, exactly what we're removing. Are we removing all of section C?
No, we are well, eventually, yes, but from what he has said so far, in the title of the ordinance, we are removing all the words after the word scope. So it's really the last 3 lines. And we're adding an and in between non-compliance and the parens number 2. So we're shortening the title and taking out and 3, a provision that requires businesses and building owners to deny admittance to any individual who fails to comply with the ordinance.
So that's all in this first amendment.
Correct.
Okay, so is everybody on board with what we were trying to amend? Member Kensinger.
Good. Jeff, could you read it word for word how you wanted to see? Is that okay, Mr. Mayor?
That's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
especially for the people listening, there's a lot of people that I'm sure that are listening.
Do you want me to read?
How the language will actually read.
The title, you mean?
Yeah,
Would
the
you like me to do it, Jeff?
That would be great.
You bet. An emergency ordinance amending emergency ordinance number 2021-19, which implemented a public health and safety measure requiring face coverings in indoor public settings to include 1, a fine for noncompliance, and 2, communally used areas within its scope.
Okay, that's how the title will read.
Correct.
And as well as that, in this amendment, section,
He hasn't got there yet. You told him to break it up. So all he's talked about is the title so far.
okay, but I asked the last time, I thought the business part was gonna be removed as well. So we're just changing the title with this amendment.
Yes, he does want to deal with all of the business fines, but you stopped him after the first.
I think it would be less, it's
Yes.
confusing enough as it is.
Yes.
Okay, so, anyway, that's what we're doing, changing the title. So it looks like it leaves, a fine structure for noncompliance with this amendment. Maybe that will disappears too. So Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The intent here is to go through this ordinance and remove the responsibility of businesses and building owners as follows, out of this ordinance. But the first amendment to this ordinance would be just with the description of the ordinance and with other changes to come to other parts of this ordinance that have references to businesses and property owners.
Right, so we're just talking to the First Amendment, and like Clerk Thompson read what the new title would be if we pass this amendment. Member Kinsinger.
Mr. Mayor, I think for clarity, why don't we just, if we decide to remove this section altogether, then that would stand to reason that we will also be removing the section that's in the title of the ordinance as well. So I don't know if it's correct, Clerk Thompson, could we just, I'll rescind my second, and could we just move right to section C, which I believe is your intent?
Well, what we could do, if it's all right with the mayor, is finish the whole thing about the business fines. There's more that Member Mucci would like to remove.
But if I'm not mistaken, these amendments to this proposed ordinance, a lot of these amendments were worked with our attorney,
Yes.
were they? So, yeah.
So I understand what,
If it was possible, what I would prefer, and I'm just gonna voice my opinion, is we'd, just make a motion to vote for the, call for the question and vote for this and see if ordinance 2021-20 is voted in or out. It sounds like there's many changes and some second thoughts as to this ordinance being presented.
to all of you.
So I'm just throwing it out. So with that being said, we're back to the first proposed amendment. Unless Member Kinsinger wants to, would we still end up with the same outcome? Member Kinsinger, if we just changed the title now and then went down through the list of proposed amendments?
I'm going to defer to Member Mucci since it's his motion.
Well, can I jump in? I understand Member Kinsinger's confusion because his thought is if we change the title of this ordinance and then the rest of the parts that talk about the business fines do not pass, then we've messed up because we'll still have things in the ordinance and we've changed the title. So it does make sense, if it's okay with you, Mayor Jensen, to allow Member Mucci to continue just about the business fines and the sections that will be removed all in one motion.
Okay, so we've changed, the motion would need to be changed, the second would need to be rescinded then?
Correct.
Okay, so let's go that way. Member Kinsinger.
Yes, I rescinded my motion. Or I rescinded my second.
I'll second.
And so Member Mucci, if you'd like to restate your motion.
Sure.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to remove the language of the ordinance relating to the responsibility of businesses and building owners as follows. In the title description of the ordinance, delete all the words after the word scope and add an between non-compliance and 2, delete the 5th and 6th whereas clauses, delete part C of section 3 in its entirety, and delete paragraph 2 of proposed section 3A in part D.
Those are all the sections that deal with the business fines in this ordinance.
Those are the ones, could you please
Yes,
repeat that and explain what's
Yes.
going to be removed?
absolutely. So after
First, we need a
changing the title. Oh, yes, a second. I'm sorry.
Yes, I'll second that.
Seconded by member Kinsinger.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, after changing the title, the next change will be to delete the 5th and 6th whereas clauses.
And they are,
Many businesses and building owners are taking measures to ensure compliance with the emergency ordinance to keep their employees, customers, and visitors safe. However, it has been reported that a number of businesses are not. And whereas the Assembly believes that requiring businesses and building owners to deny admittance to those not complying with the emergency ordinance will assist in stemming this rapidly spreading outbreak. So those 2 whereases would be removed from this ordinance. And then part C of section 3 of the ordinance. So section 3 being substantive provisions. Part C, it was being proposed to be added, and member Mucci would like to delete it. Part C says, businesses, employers, and building owners or lessees shall deny admittance to any individual who fails to comply with this emergency ordinance, provided, however, that this ordinance shall be applied in a manner consistent with the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, and any other applicable provision of law. Businesses may choose to allow individuals who request an accommodation under the ADA to wear a face shield. So that section C of section 3 will be removed if
and part of the title and 2 whereases.
that's correct. And proposed section 3A in part D, paragraph 2 will be deleted that deals with businesses. Would you like me to read that?
That pertains to the fine that business owners could receive if they
Correct.
don't require people to mask when they come in their business.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So, I think I understand where we're at. Does the rest of the assembly understand where we're at? It's a lot quicker than I am. So, any discussion on this amendment? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the purpose of this amendment for me is when I originally saw this ordinance a week or so ago, it struck me as odd and uncomfortable for me to require businesses in town to enforce a borough mandate that we would pass for the community. The borough government has enforcement capabilities with our police department. They take care of the ordinance that we pass and the laws that we pass. They take care of that kind of stuff. To ask the business owners to take on the enforcement part of an ordinance, to me, seems kind of flawed from the beginning. The business owners have the opportunity to refuse service to anybody that comes into their store. If somebody comes in and they're being a bonehead or being disrespectful, whether it has to do with poor manners or whatever, the mask thing is, an associate thing, but it's up to the business owners to figure out what they got going on in their businesses. And for me, I'm not trying to tell businesses what to do. They have a pretty good idea of what they're doing. They have a good business model, most of them do. And I think if they need help with an issue, whether or not somebody's being a bonehead in their business and they ask them to leave and they don't leave, they can certainly call the police department, and the police department can come over and help the business owner with compliance. And if the individuals who are causing the headaches to the business owner decide not to leave, then the police can take care of it and cite them for trespassing. So I think we have that already in the community. So that's the reason for this first amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any other discussion on this First Amendment? Clerk, Member Kensinger.
Yes, I concur with Assembly Member Mucci. I think there's plenty of opportunities out there for if businesses are having problems, and there have been reported problems of people entering businesses and not masking, even at the request of the business owner. So I think what we have right now is enough for business owners to be able to enforce. And I don't want to put them in a position of having to enforce this. I realize it's very contentious. And I don't think a lot of people that work in a lot of establishments in town, signed up to do this when they took those jobs. So I'll be supporting rescinding this part of this ordinance.
Lynn.
I think removing this is, I agree with it, but I think it also makes this whole thing inconsistent and I think it's then all the fines need to go away and the whole 2020, 2021, 20 needs to disappear from my perspective.
Okay, at this, thanks for your, everybody's input. We're voting on the First Amendment. And I think we all understand what we're removing and taking out of this ordinance. So Clerk Thompson, please call the roll.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Mark. Thank you.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The second amendment I'd like to propose is under private residences. I move to add a sentence to section 3, part B, at the end of the definition of communal spaces that reads, "This shall not be deemed to include areas within private residences."
That's the only part of the Second Amendment.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's a little easier to digest. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Tremblay under section 3B to add, including private residences. Any discussion? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this amendment that I'm proposing is to make sure that the ordinance is clear and the community is clear that this ordinance has nothing to do with private residences. There was some concern that the ordinance had to do with telling people who they can and can't have in the community and into their houses or private residences. And I just wanted to make sure it was clear in this ordinance. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the Second Amendment? Clerk, call the roll.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Okay, Second Amendment passes unanimously. Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The third amendment I'm going to propose has to do with oral warnings for fines. I move to amend the new section 3A in part D entitled Fines as follows. And the first sentence after the word violation and add new language to the beginning of the next sentence. So it reads, for the first violation, a person shall receive an oral warning. Thereafter, a fine of $50 for each separate violation will be imposed.
There a second?
Second.
Been a motion and a second, and give me the area again, Member Mucci, please, where this amendment is going to take place.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's under oral warnings for fines.
It's 3A number 1.
So that's going to be language that'll be added.
That is correct.
Yeah. Discussion. Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this proposed amendment is to make the the fines and the violation less severe than what we had originally looked at. We have talked earlier in the meeting about the last mandate that we had, that there was no teeth in it for what we were going to do if somebody was violating this ordinance. This gives, as far as I'm concerned, it gives the police department a tool to use if they're called into a business, and if the police and the business owner and the individual can't come up with some kind of understanding about either the individual who is being asked to leave won't leave, the police department has the opportunity to either deal with the trespassing charge for the person or to issue the oral warning for the first time. And if the same individual who violates the mask mandate again in a different place or in the same store, the fine would be $50 for each separate violation. So, thank you.
Member Lim.
Member Mucci, so do you plan to have this proactive or reactive?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to speak to it now. I was going to speak to it when the motion, when the amendment or the ordinance was finished up, but since you asked, my intent is to, if the police department gets called to a business and they're asked to help out, or if the police department in their patrols is in a business and they ask how things are going, and the business owner says, well, I need some help here, I need some help there. I don't expect the police department to go into businesses looking for people to cite or give tickets to. Does that answer your question?
Totally reactive. If they're asked, they'll go, otherwise they don't go.
I'm not saying they don't go thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not saying they don't go. If the police are out in a patrol situation or just doing community outreach within the community, I think checking in with businesses is always a good idea. I think it leads to good rapport with the community. But my intent to this whole ordinance is not to have the police be proactive and looking for people to give citations to. Is that? Okay.
Any other discussion on this amendment?
Yes, please.
Okay, I didn't see you. Sorry, Jay. Member Stan Grader.
No apologies, Mr. Mayor. All right. So this amendment I'm wrestling with. In our last one, we were talking about if a business, has people in there, and let's say that business is very strongly feels they should be wearing a mask, and a patron refers it can be issued a trespassing ticket, which can be done for no shoes, no shirt, no service also, or a mask in this case. Whatever the business's deal is, my concern with keeping a fine structure in place with this, for getting rid of the fine structure for businesses, which I felt great about voting for. I thought that needed to go. This doesn't change that. I think the only thing it opens us up to is the subjective nature of humanity. Like, who's getting issued a ticket? I go back to this spring. As many of us remember, there was one written warning by police for a mask, and that was in a reactive sense. Like, who's to say who's going to be getting that warning or ticket? I am leery of the subjective nature of that. Obviously, I'll speak for myself. I don't want across the board heavy-handed cops chasing down those without masks, because as evidenced by some of the letters we received, there's a big chunk of people who will want that ticket as a badge of honor. See, got mine, no mask. I think it's ludicrous, but people will do that. I've heard it, and it's a reality. So by keeping that structure in there, we're removing, the source of some of these things. Businesses are large gatherings, but we could leave the potential open to targeting individuals. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, especially if we already have like Member Mucci said, that in place, that if a business isn't satisfied with a patron, they can call the cops anyway, and it's a trespassing. The idea of, adding a mask ticket on top of it just seems superfluous at that point to me. I don't think I can support this one. Thanks.
Kinsinger.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a tendency to agree with Jay. I've been wrestling with this all week. I've read all the correspondence that people have sent in. Some of it's very heartfelt. My original intent on passing a mandate was just to get everybody's attention and just say, look, people, we got a problem. I mean, right now, Petersburg, our borough, has the #1 case count per capita of any place, any county in the USA. I mean, I don't want us to be known for something like that. And I don't know what we need to do. All I was really concerned about was results. In other words, what we can do to try and slow down the spread of COVID. I understand a lot of folks out there don't think COVID's a problem. It's just a common cold, but there are a lot of us in this community that feel differently about that. And my hope was that people could just have a little bit of respect for their fellow citizens and their feelings. You don't need to go into a store if you don't want to wear a mask. It's that simple. We're not forcing you to wear a mask, only when you go in a place where there's other people. So I don't really know whether a fine will do any good. That's kind of where I'm at right now. But what I think will do good, and what I did like to see, was a chief going around and Dr. Trusillo going around and talking to the businesses and say, hey, put the sign up, tell people we have a mask mandate in town, please wear a mask. You know, I don't want to see people getting into confrontations over this. I don't want to see any more division in the community. There's a simple way to solve that problem. Just wear a mask if you go in a place where there's other people. Practice social distancing. I respect your opinion on a vaccine. You can get a vaccine or not get a vaccine. But just remember, there's a lot of us out here in the community that have conditions that if we get COVID, it's going to be really bad for us. A whole lot of people. And we're not hearing them talk tonight. And I don't want to get into scientific evidence. I'm not a doctor. I can read. I got an internet connection. And I guarantee you, for every article that there is out there saying that masks work, you can find another study and another reference that say they work. You know, the only thing that's really proven out there that's really effective are vaccines. So I'm going to have a hard time supporting any fines on this. But I would like to see the police department and the medical community here in town continue their outreach. And when we passed this ordinance, I thought this was going to be something that was going to be there for like a week, 10 days. You know, stop the spread, whatever you want to call it. I didn't see this as something we're going to be living with till Christmas. But folks, if you don't do what we need to do right now, we're going to be dealing with this all winter. So it's in your hands, I guess. And a lot of people are right. We can't force you to do the right thing. You just have to figure that out on your own.
Member Tremblay?
Thank you. I understand if there isn't interest in the fine. I waffle on its own, you know, whether it would do the job we would hope it to do myself. My reasoning for having it in basically was the example of what happened after a special meeting, which was an event going forward, full steam ahead, wouldn't even know a pandemic had happened, let alone was currently rearing its head in the community. And so to my mind, anything that could work, and it's really hard that this is happening at this time of year because we like to gather right now, we like to be getting together. And so I am deeply concerned that without something with a little more teeth, that we run the risk of basically different kinds of events keeping this circulating well through winter. And I want to see this current moment change. I want to see it end. I think a lot about the fact that this summer we had, you know, we keep talking about this outbreak in reference to last winter, but we skip over the one that happened this summer because it happened so quickly. You know, it was here, there, back again before we even had time to react as an assembly. And 2 community members died. who would otherwise probably be spending the holidays with their loved ones this year. And so, you know, I think a lot about what's about to happen in the next couple of weeks and what we could do to help change the course. And that's why I had the fine put in, was thinking that it might do something more than, because clearly, because we say so, wasn't working. And so that was my idea. So this is on the amendment of what we're speaking to, the amendment of having an oral warning go before a fine. And that to me seems reasonable. So I'm interested in what other people think on this amendment. And then we can go backwards and eliminate this one entirely, unless I missed something, but I'm pretty sure that's where we're at. So.
Mucci, you had some more?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just to reiterate over this amendment, it was just to give some guidance in here for the ordinance that we're passing. If you know, I don't know what the intent is of the assembly, but if the intent is to not pass this amendment and just use the trespassing citation or violation as an enforcement tool, then I guess we're reaching the same goal. But my intent with this amendment was to have this specifically relate to non-compliance of a mask in a business if a business owner calls the police in to help with a situation. So one way or the other, we're kind of doing the same, but my intent was to have this focused on the mask mandate that we have in place now. So thank you.
Any other discussion on this amendment, which I believe would be just to add a warning instead of a fine to individuals if they're in a public space? Member Mucci?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it would be adding a warning and reducing the fine from $100 and making it $50 for each separate violation. Thank you.
So I wasn't aware that we were reducing the fine for businesses in this amendment. I thought we were just adding a warning to individuals. Clerk Thompson? Is that where the amendment was to add a warning to individuals?
Yes, yes, that's exactly what the
And then
amendment
fine
was.
had nothing to do with reducing 100 to 50 for businesses?
The business part has already been removed. And so all we're talking about right now is giving individuals an oral warning before they were given a $50 fine.
I thought this amendment was. So, okay, if there's no other discussion on this amendment, clerk call the roll.
Jay,
No.
David,
No.
Bob,
No.
Mark,
No.
Jeff,
Yes.
and Chelsea.
Yes.
Okay, so that amendment fails with a 4-2 vote. Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the last amendment I have is in regards to, what section here? Section 6. And it's in addition to adding a repeal/health officer recommendation. So I move to add a new section 6 titled Repeal/health officer recommendation that reads as follows. This ordinance may be earlier repealed at a regular or special meeting of the assembly upon the determination by the assembly that the provisions of the ordinance are no longer necessary to address the health and safety of the public. The assembly shall receive the advice and recommendation of the borough health officer in making this determination.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Member Kinsinger, or by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Kinsinger. So would that tie our hands before we could remove this if it passes? To get a recommendation by the health officer before the assembly can remove it? That
Yes,
was-
it says shall.
The clerk is shaking her head. So that ties our hands as an assembly, to my opinion. Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. my intent with this is not to tie the borough's hands, the assembly's hands, but to use any information we can get from medical professionals to help us determine if we no longer need a mask mandate in place. We can certainly have a meeting at any time to repeal anything that we have passed in the past or continuing looking at, but I was just looking for a way for the community to know that there is options for the assembly besides the special meeting. We can certainly ask our public health official to give us advice and recommendations, and that's the intent of this, not to bind the hands of the assembly.
You
Thank-
could change shall to may, and that would change things.
Mr. Mayor?
Bermucci.
Yeah, with the acceptance of the second, I'd like to change it to may. That's my intent of the original wording of this ordinance, and not to bind the hands of the assembly, but to have the borough public health officer help us if we think that's necessary.
Yes, I concur.
Okay, so the maker of the motion and the second have changed their amendment to remove the word shall to may of the health officer. And I personally still have some concerns if we're relying on the health officer to, I guess we've been getting direction from the CDC health professionals all the way through this whole pandemic. So anyway, any other discussion on this amendment? Clerk, call the roll.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Mark,
No.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
No.
Dave,
Okay, so that amendment passes with a 4-2 vote with member Lynn and the mayor voting no. Are there any other amendments to this motion, to this ordinance? Member Lynn?
Yeah, just a question. Do you make sure I'm tracking on, we have allowed still the fine to stay in place on 3A1?
correct.
Okay, I move to remove the entire fine section of 3A1.
Second.
Okay, discussion. So just for clarification, have we already removed the fines for businesses?
Yes,
Okay, and then so this would remove the fines for individuals.
correct.
Okay, so any discussion on this proposed, was there a second? Was there a second?
Yes,
I
correct.
seconded it.
Okay, I thought that I'm getting too many motions and seconds and stuff, so. All right, any other discussion on this amendment? That would remove the fines from the section where individuals can be fined for not wearing a mask in public spaces.
Can I chime in, Mr. Mayor?
Sure. Remember Stan Gregor.
Thanks. Yeah, obviously those listening heard me second it. It's a conflicted bag for me. I think of our role in the assembly of, especially in this time of pandemic, was what will help in terms of public health. And the reality is right now, the fine structure for that isn't. And furthermore, I think allowing this to be warnings or tickets to be given subjectively, I have grave reservations about that. Again, see this last spring when we had one written warning subjectively given to a person in the community, just one. That puts me on edge for what enforcement would look like, that it would not potentially not be even-handed and or inconsistent. And again, I thought, I'm going to cite this caller again later, but Mr. Albach called in and he's right. You know, a lot of folks in the community have said, yeah, if things get bad, we'll do the right thing, individual responsibility. Yeah, that's just not happening. It's not. You can't paint it any other way. There, even as we heard on some of the earlier calls, there is a significant portion of the population that will not wear a mask because they don't believe in it or whatever. That's for a variety of reasons. And I do believe that some of those individuals would attempt to monopolize our police time by wearing that as a badge of honor, which again, I find ludicrous. I say that plainly and I say that clearly. I find that ludicrous when really, if we're talking about public health, what is going to help? Masks help. Phil's talked about it. Not perfect, but they help. You know, we all wear when we get on a plane. with strangers, but certain people have decided they won't wear one in a local business, and that's unfortunate. It bothers me. That said, though, the idea of fining someone into the ground $50 a crack, trying to collect money on it, like, it doesn't make sense to me. And most importantly, I don't think it'll solve the problem. It bothers me that it wouldn't. This would be an effective tool. I'd be fully supportive, but I don't think it will be. And again, that disappoints me to say that out loud, but I have no interest in passing something that will not help public health at this point. And I don't relish saying that out loud. My 2 cents.
Thank you. Any other input on this amendment? And once again, this takes the fine structure
Mayor?
away. Member Tremblay.
Sorry. I'd just like to thank Member Stanton Gregor. His 2 cents, I think, just changed my mind. So I'll be changing my vote. Evidence of how much I've been thinking about all this, changing my mind on my own platforms. But yeah, so that explains my future vote.
Okay, so the vote on this amendment will remove the fine structure for individuals. Correct? Okay, clerk, call the roll.
Okay, before I do call the roll, I would just like to say that if this does pass and the fine structure for individuals is removed, I will also remove the wording in the title of the ordinance that deals with the fine structure, okay?
I think that would be appropriate.
Thank you. Okay.
People will be reading the title and looking for it in the content.
Yes. David?
Yes.
Bob? Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're back to the main motion as amended many times. Any discussion on that? So I would, maybe the clerk can help just give a summary for the people listening and for myself, how our amendments are going to change this from 2021-20 to the version we had of 2021-19. Is it, so we still have the communal space, those definitions? They're gonna.
So
what are they, I mean, with no fine structure, you had to wear a mask in any public space anyway, correct?
well, it did not include places like the Elks Club and the Moose Club in the original emergency ordinance.
So this is
So the communal spaces does include that, yes.
private social clubs, societies, lodges, associations, or nonprofit groups. So it would still include including entrance lobbies, hallways, and stairwells for such areas.
Correct.
Okay, any other discussion?
Briefly, please.
Member Stanton Gregor and then Member Tremblay.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for your patience, Member Tremblay. Yeah, I think Member Kensinger really touched on an important thing earlier. Right now, we have the highest per capita rate of COVID of any county in the US. That should not be taken lightly. I admit I'm frustrated with some of the callers earlier who think this is some part of control or tyranny or something like that. I find that language offensive because as a largely volunteer body, we all have lives outside of here and families that we're trying to do our best by. I think something that, and again, I'm going to vote yes on it as with the amendments. I can live with that. You know, in this community, if we choose to go to Hawaii, Washington, or somewhere, we wear a mask to get on a plane, and we're not allowed to. Some people won't do it for their own neighbors like that. I know I said this already, but I find it really bothersome. We'll put on a mask for people we don't know and a big tube to fly down to Seattle, but we can't do it to walk into a store to minimize the risk of getting our neighbors sick. That seems really backwards to me, and I'm imploring members of the public to please, it doesn't cost you a penny. Please wear a mask and do your best not to get other people sick. It is preventable. Mitigation strategies do work. I hope that isn't falling on deaf ears. I just wanted to make sure I said it one more time. Thank you.
Member Tremblay?
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the members of the Assembly for their hard work and a lot of thought that went into this process. I think all the amendments and the amount of discussion that went into it really shows how tough policymaking out loud can be. I wanted to go back to my original inspiration for bringing this whole thing forward, and for just speaking to the urgency of the moment. I wanted to share the reactions people had with me when we talked about the fact that the event that had been long planned was not postponed after the rapid increase in counts and after our call to the emergency of the community, basically, for them to respond in kind. I wrote down words that people used as their reaction to the fact that the event went forward as planned. Unbelievable, shocking, awful, selfish, disappointing, and devastating. And that kind of summed up where I was at. And so I'm glad that we came to something a little bit more cohesive as an assembly. I hope that the community takes this message of personal responsibility forward and acts accordingly. And I hope that we're able to turn this thing around quickly. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the ordinance as amended? Member Lynn?
Yeah, I'm a little frustrated with the fact that in town, you know, one of our schools is out of session this week, and that the hospital has had so many cases in there that's being treated. And people say, well, we don't have any hospitalizations. Well, if you look at all the people who've been treated this week, there's been a heck of a lot of people treated. And it's time, you know, we say, well, you know, let's look after ourselves, but I think we also need to look at each other and look at our community. And when you look at this, I don't think this is going to get us anywhere. I think we got to go back to, you're simply going to have to take responsibility for yourself and look after others. And so with that, I'm not going to vote for it because I think we need to go back to some basics and allow people to have some respect for one another. Thank you.
Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yep, I know what Member Lynn is saying, you know, and I appreciate where he's coming from. Like I said earlier, when I saw this original, the way the wording was, it just struck me as really odd. Obviously, we've all heard from business owners, and it's never been my intent to make the business owners in town have a tougher time than they already are having. You know, they're having a hard time retaining employees. They're having a hard time getting supplies from down south. Thanksgiving and Christmas are supposed to be great times of the year for the local business community, as well as times of happiness for the community. You know, we're in a public health crisis right now with the case counts as high as they are. And I'm hoping that the case count goes down to a point where these mandates can go away. You know, the assembly has a responsibility of preparing the community for emergencies and life-threatening natural disasters. And for me, this is kind of a natural disaster affecting the lives of folks in Petersburg. And for me not to do anything about it and just say, well, I want folks to do the right thing, and I have faith that they're going to do the right thing. That's not an informed process for me. I need to be proactive in what I'm trying to do here on the assembly, and I think this is a good step here. I spent part of yesterday morning talking to the police chief of Wrangell about how they were dealing with stuff and fines and the mask mandates, and they're struggling with it as well. They're voting on it, I guess, tonight or tomorrow, whatever it is. And, you know, they're struggling on how they're going to enforce it. They have the same issues going on in Wrangell that they have in Petersburg, that for some reason, some folks think it's their God-given right to not wear a mask, and that's got flaws in it in itself. We heard from Nathan Lopez tonight, pastor of Assembly of God Church, doing the right thing. The case count went up. They closed the services last Sunday and closed their children's services for the day. And, you know, that's doing the right thing. You know, when I was talking to the police chief of Sitka this afternoon when I was driving in here, he kind of gave me the same advice as what's going on in Wrangell. He says it's a divisive issue. When you get the police involved in it, people get wound up about it. And, you know, while the fine structure that is been removed, I still feel that the police have a tool with a trespassing violation. If a business owner asks the police to come over and help with a person who isn't behaving the way a store owner wants them to. I think that trespassing violation is a tool that they can use. So, yeah, I'm disappointed that we have to hear all the angst, and we hear from the people who want us to do more and people who want us to do nothing. But people say it's their individual right. Yeah, it is their individual right, but we are a community of 3,000 people, and everything we do individually affects the rest of us. And I think people need to hold themselves accountable for bad decisions in town. I think, like we've heard earlier, people think that they don't have to do what they don't want to do, but it's more than that. It's a community-wide discussion that we're all trying to do what's best to get us out of this public health crisis that's been affecting us for the last couple of weeks. And once that crisis abates and goes down, then I think we have the opportunity to see these things go away. My intention is not to keep these on here indefinitely. I want them to go away as soon as we can. So I will be supporting this, and I appreciate the Assembly's discussion on this. It's been very helpful for me. Thank you.
Any other input? Member Kinsinger, you're leaning forward if you don't see your hand yet.
Yes, I've struggled with this for quite a few days. And I think the path that we're going down is right. I think we just need to get everybody's attention in town and say, look, do the right thing. Wear a mask, social distance. If you're inclined to get a vaccine, get a vaccine. We're 35th in the United States, the state of Alaska, in terms of the number of people vaccinated in the state. We're at about 58, 59%, I believe, in our community. That vaccination rate needs to be higher. The vaccine is the best tool that we have out here to get us out of this mess. Because I don't want to be talking about this a year from now. So I'm going to be supporting this.
Yeah, even as amended, I'm not going to support this ordinance. All it did was add some spaces to the language. And my opinion is there's going to, consider it unfortunate or whatever you want to consider it. Some people just aren't going to mask up. And if you would have put a fine on it for business owners and for individuals, I think it would have just made the division even stronger. I just hope people take it serious that there is a problem and do what they feel is best. And I don't think there's some people you're not gonna be able to force into compliance. And so with that being said, if there's no other input, will the clerk call the roll?
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
No.
David,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Mark.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance 2120 passes with a 4-2 vote with member Lynn and myself voting no. Item C under new business, motor pool shop fire damage repair, change order 2 has been presented to us from Mr. Cotta. I would entertain a motion to approve this change order. Most of the changes are going to be covered by insurance, if I'm not mistaken, from the way I read it. So
Yes, sir.
I'd entertain a motion to approve it.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Kinsinger. Any discussion? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would it be, I have what the projects are about, but maybe for the folks at home, maybe a brief recap of what the change orders are going to entail with this new building or the revised building.
Sure, I can do that through the mayor. One of the challenges of cleaning up a fire site is you start uncovering things as you tear old stuff out and get ready to build new. So in that process of removing and demoing things, additional issues were found that cost additional money to fix. And again, insurance covers most of it, as the mayor said. So we had some additional asbestos tile removal that was found when the flooring in the shop was demolished. Asbestos has to be abated, and the cost is, estimated at $13,500. When they took out some of the building walls and insulation, we had some additional bracing that was behind that was affected by the fire and warped a bit. So that was being replaced at 3,800. State Fire Marshal got involved, and that's always can be interesting. Found things that, while they've probably been there for a very long time, couldn't see because of the nature of how the building is in place. So changes to the north and south walls, and eliminating some exposed foam board insulation and getting rid of that. Additional framing and wall coverings had to be installed. Cost was, with the fire marshal changes, were about $21,285, all covered by insurance. Had to add an exit sign and some emergency lighting for about $2,300, and 2 new fire extinguishers for about $250. The crane runway beams that the crane runs along, when they were measuring it out, discovered the south side of the building had warped slightly from the fire, and pulling the crane beam, again, the beam that the crane runs along, out of alignment. Shims were added to the runway beams to bring them into proper tolerances for the installation of the new crane. Cost was about $5,100, covered by insurance. At present, the construction contract amount was just over 1.1 million. If this change order is approved, an additional $46,240 would be authorized, of which all but $450 has been approved for reimbursement by the borough's insurance company. Total contract amount would then be $1,229,340, and that's about as fast as I could do that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with this change order and how things are going up there, when are we looking to have this project finished? And would this number be all in the, I'm not asking, looking at crystal ball, but is it?
We will likely have another change order coming. This one will be more on the borough, things that we saw that needed, would make it a better building. I don't know what that amount is. It's not going to be significant. The hope is this building will be done by the 30th of November, so the guys can get in out of the cold. We had some delays, a COVID outbreak among the construction crew and our own folks as well, which has slowed down. We wanted this done by November 12th. So we're behind schedule. That's the joys of working in a COVID world right now. But the hope is to have this done by the end of the month.
Thank you very much.
Questions on this? So will the clerk call the roll?
David,
Yes.
Mark, Bob,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Okay, we've approved the change orders for the Public Works Building. Brings us to item D, is borough guidance on volunteer projects. We asked the manager to come up with a guidance protocol for volunteers that want to do projects on borough property. And so we need to entertain a motion to approve that guidance that the manager has listed out for us.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Lynn. Any discussion on this? Member Lynn?
I think I've got comments from 3 different groups on this. And I think, manager, you hit the nail right on the head on this one. The only comment that I got that may need a little bit of, but I think it can be dealt with on an individual project, and that had to do with if you had to have a licensed contractor, and I'll use for example, somebody, let's say you're doing electrical. What's wrong with somebody, a grunt, so running the line but not hooking it up? I didn't see anything wrong with it, but I think it can be done on an individual basis but other than that, I think he hit it right on.
I think it's an important document to have, in writing. Is there any other input? Member Mucci?
Nope. I want to thank Member Lynn for bringing this up and the manager for putting it forward. I think there were several loopholes that we needed to kind of close. I think we, like Member Lynn talked about volunteers working on projects for the borough. I think that it's great if we have a project, and my intent was never to discourage that. I think this is something that we need, and I think I want to thank everybody who worked on it. Thank you.
Any other input? Clerk, call the roll to approve this format.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Mark, Jay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the Borough guidance on volunteer projects passes. Brings us to communications. We have communications listed that we have received since October 28th. They're on the agenda tonight, so you'll be able to find them on our website. Brings us, that's it for that communications, unless someone has communications they'd like to share. Okay, seeing none. Item 17, assembly discussion items. There was nothing under that, but we have an amendment and it's discussion on the post office. And like Member Kinsinger said, it's a little bit out of our jurisdiction, but so Member Kinsinger, you wanted to bring it up? So,
Yes, I understand there's not much we can do, but if the assembly would concur, I would like to prepare a letter to be forwarded to our congressional delegation and to the regional supervisors of our local post office to see if they could do in assisting our local post office in upping their manning level. It's I think everybody in town's frustrated. I mean, it seems like every other time I go up there expecting it to be open, they've changed the hours. I understand there's a lot of things that are beyond the control of the people working up there right now, but they should be getting some help from outside if they don't have enough resources to deal with it here. And I just think we need to let some people out there know that we're concerned about this. And I think one of the reasons I'm concerned about it is because there's a lot of people in town that don't like to go up there and stand in line, particularly if there's other people around that aren't wearing masks. So we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. So that's my biggest issue that I have with it, outside of the fact that, people don't like to wait in line for an hour just to get a package.
did we not reach out to our federal delegation through Sherry Klein and Senator Mikowski's office at some point?
Through the mayor, I can, yeah, we did, actually. We worked through Sherry Klein, who talked to Senator Mikowski, who interacted with the post office. They tried to bring in some folks from out of Petersburg to help. It's a staffing issue, is what I've been told. Brought people in, kind of ramped up their hiring. I don't know how that's gone. I haven't heard back. And it improved for a while. I think what's hit is either more people have left, or the people that were being brought in from other areas had to go back home to where they're from, and they had nobody else to replace them. And like everybody else, post office has people who need vacations and get sick, and I think that's what they're suffering with right now. Staffing levels, I don't have an answer to that. I don't know what they're supposed to have, and I'm not sure they'd tell us anyway. But I can reach out to Sherry Klein. I did ask her last time on behalf of the assembly, who wanted the name of somebody important in state of Alaska regarding post office. She couldn't get a name. So we can try again.
That's interesting. I agree. I was just in Delta Junction, and Fairbanks, and they're both have the same problem we have. One of them's only open 2 days a week. The other one, Fairbanks, as you can see, in a city that size, it was only open part days when I was there. So we're not the only ones here in Alaska having the problem, but I agree with seeing if we can, maybe before we write a letter, ask the manager to reach out and see what we can find out.
Yeah, anything would be fine. I just think we need to, I get a lot of people asking me, can we do anything about the post office? And I say, no, we can't. But the one thing we can do is we can, as a borough, we can send our concern to Senator Mikowski.
Yeah, I don't think it would hurt to, I don't know if it'll help, but it won't hurt to send another request. But I see they're advertising for work. If you're looking for something to do. So, any other discussion items? Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't even remember when, but earlier in the week when we were talking about mask mandates and stuff, we got a correspondence from the city manager regarding mask enforcement. I was just curious if the manager is comfortable with the discussions he's heard tonight, that we need to answer these six.
Been added to the discussion.
This is just a discussion.
I'm comfortable, I mean, I've got to have a serious discussion with our police chief, you know, so that we make sure we're all on the same page. I mean, I think what we did with Dr. Tasillo and, you know, Chief Kerr was a good thing. So I'm saying these things expecting the assembly to either nod or tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. So that's, I'd like to do more of that. Maybe it can't always involve a doctor. You know, Dr. Tasillo, again, did that on his own time. He was recovering from shoulder surgery and offered to do that. So I don't know that we can always get a doctor to go along, but I don't think it's a bad thing for police officers to check in on the businesses. I don't want the businesses to feel like they're being checked on in a negative way. It is just more along the lines of it's an opportunity for them to interact directly with one of the officers or the chief. I think we'll do more of that. I'm not going to proactively ask the police to look for mask violations. We will rely on the business community to call and tell us they've got a problem. At that point, we'll respond. That's different than some of the citizens of Petersburg want. I mean, I get consistent calls. Why aren't we enforcing the mask mandate? So I'll deal with that. But the answer is when a business needs help, we will be there. But we're not going to arbitrarily just start walking through grocery stores looking for people with not wearing masks. I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Okay. Assembly member comments. Any comments from assembly members this evening?
Yes, sir.
Remember, looked like you wanted to say something.
You read me correctly, Mr. Mayor. As far as an assembly member comment, I want to express a little bit of frustration for some of the members of the business community in their letter they wrote to us. For those listening at home, we on the assembly received a letter from certain businesses that if we had passed the ordinance we were talking about earlier with business fines, they'd be threatening to close their doors tomorrow if we did so. And that's not a dialogue. That's threatening and that's bullying. We're all pretty easy to get a hold of. I was frustrated that certain members of the community decided to take that approach, and really, to me, like felt hold the community hostage to their views. And again, their views about something as simple as masking. So I wanted to publicly say I was very disappointed in that letter we received. I don't think that's a good way of doing business. As Member Albach said earlier, like reach out to people, find us, try to be a part of the solution. Threatening to close your doors because you don't like a community rule or law was very frustrating for me. So I wanted to say that publicly. Thank you.
Have comments, Member Lynn.
Yeah, I just have a couple items. At the next meeting, Steve, would you be willing to give us an update on where you are with the fire truck replacement and what's going on at the next meeting? And also, we changed the hours and a lot of the work up at the baler facility to make sure that new baler was properly maintained and so forth. We'd be interested, I think, in how that's going and whether or not, and what kind of costs this is getting us into. If more or less, are we on the right track? What should we be doing? If you would, please.
Sure.
And the last item I have is that I share a number of the members' concerns about the virus. When you look at, I want our schools in session, and that's going to require all of us to take, to give a little. And that's really where we need to be, and just have some respect for one another, rather than to draw lines in the sand. That's not asking too much. And, but I am asking, please consider the other folks who are around. Thank you.
Any other comments by assembly members? Recognitions. Any recognitions of staff or assembly members? Member Tremblay?
Thank you. I'd like to thank the healthcare workers who are working really, really, really hard right now. Sounds like there might be an update happening on Friday afternoon. I know we're all looking forward to hearing that. They're kind of just working and living in a blender. And so being able to steal them away to talk to the public, the people who seem to be the least involved have the most amount of questions about what's happening, and the people who are doing it are too busy doing them to answer. So hopefully we can all learn more then. And so I just wanted to thank them for that. In particular, I wanted to thank our public health nurse, Erin Michaels. She's dealing with our outbreak at the same time as Ringgold's, and she is a dual, she works for both of us. And so I just wanted to lift her up, and I hope that she's getting the support that she needs. And then third, I wanted to just thank the community, anybody who is looking at the current situation and looking for ways to help each other. We need more of that. And so I would invite anybody, if you pray, if you put out good energy, if you bring light to a space, now is a really good time to do that and to think of ways that you can increase that, because, we are losing daylight every day right now. And so it comes to us to make something a little bit brighter wherever we can. So thank you to everybody who's making that effort.
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank the supportive business owners in town who are working extra hard to make sure they keep the doors open. The essential workers aren't just hospital and school and the borough employees. It's the frontline people that work up at Hammer Wecons and Trading Union who are masked up, maybe not happy about it, but they're there so that we can buy groceries. I just wanted to say a shout out to all the employees at Hammer Wecon and Trading Union. I also wanted to, take a shout out to the borough school system here. We had a report from Dr. Tasillo about the unbelievable job that the school system is doing, utilizing a combination of in-person and remote learning. Their testing protocol has been identified in cases early. They are being asked to do stuff that they were not trained for. And I think it's important to recognize the school staff and how hard they're working, how stressed they are. There's no substitutes up there. And like Member Lynn said, it's vitally important to this community that the schools remain open. When the schools shut down, it affects every business in town. The schools have a vital role in the community of educating our children, but it also keeps them off the streets. And if the schools are closed down, parents have to either come home or find some other way to take care of the kids. And I just want to say that I appreciate what the school system is doing and the hospital, but frontline, I think that the school system is doing more than they've ever been asked to do. And I honestly appreciate what they're doing. So thanks a lot for what you're doing.
Any other assembly members have recognitions? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
For second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? I didn't think anybody would be.